And in other news out of Canberra, Australia will soon be forced to confront decades of mistreatment of people with disabilities. All parties in the federal parliament have agreed a royal commission should be held.
How it will work and when it'll be called haven't been settled, but recognition that its time has come is the fulfilment of years of campaigning by those who've suffered. We'll delve into this a little deeper with Labor MP Linda Burney in just a moment, but first, this from political reporter Jane Norman.
They're not just advocates, they're survivors. And this journey to Canberra is a deeply personal one.
The overwhelming feeling that I remember when I was a child and there was a nurse coming and setting fire to my hair at night is that people did not believe us.
For decades, people with disabilities have been marginalised, institutionalised and abused, sometimes by those they trusted most.
I survived 10 years of violence at the hands of my husband, who was also my carer, and that happened in my own home.
Nicole Lee escaped, but the suffering didn't end there.
The police stepped in and removed him for me. And in that moment I was absolutely petrified because I didn't have anyone to look after me.
One by one, they lined up to tell their stories.
My child has experienced abuse in school with being beaten with a newspaper and being strangled by a teacher.
After years of lobbying,
there must be no delay. People's lives are on the line.
The ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Federal Parliament has acted and offered bipartisan support for a royal commission.
We have no interest, Mr Speaker, in making any partisanship of this issue.
This is a very good moment. I'm very pleased to support it.
One way or another, a royal commission is coming. The question is whether it'll be set up by this government or the one that's formed after the election. For those who came here today, this vote represents justice delayed but achieved.
If we can have a royal commission into the banks, then surely we can have an inquiry into the most vulnerable people in our community that are being preyed upon by monsters who come at night.
They've got a voice and they're demanding to be heard. Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
Well, for more on this now, I'm joined by Labor MP Linda Burney, the Shadow Minister for Human Services from Parliament House in Canberra. Good evening to you, Linda Burney. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Good evening.
As we just heard, Scott Morrison has committed to supporting a non-binding motion for a Royal Commission into disability care. This is a good step, isn't it?
Very good step that there is now bipartisan support for a Royal Commission. That doesn't take away from the fact that the Morrison government voted 3 times against a Royal Commission, but we have the agreement now. The real question now is the speed in which the Royal Commission is established, the budget allocation for the Royal Commission, and we encourage the government very much that they move quickly on this and do not leave it. You could not be anything except inspired by the people that came to Canberra today, by the people I've met over the last few weeks, their carers, their parents, the people with disability themselves. They deserve this Royal Commission.
Linda Burney, you mentioned the timing is of the essence here. Should the Royal Commission be held before or after the election?
I am worried that there will be delay tactics by the government in terms of this Royal Commission. Labor is very committed to developing the terms of reference, and we believe for it to be a true terms of reference, it needs to be developed with people with a disability, their carers and advocates. But we are worried that it will be pushed off into the long grass, and we don't want to see this happen. As I said earlier, these people have been waiting a long time. The abuses continue as we speak, and a Royal Commission is the king of inquiries, and it will shine a light on this. It'll provide healing, but very importantly, it will also provide direction and improvements in the systems that apply to people with disability.
What needs to happen now to get the ball rolling, in your opinion? We heard from Senator Jordan Steele-Jones this afternoon asking Scott Morrison to pick up the phone and call the state and territory ministers. Is it as simple as that?
There does need to be negotiations with the states and territories, particularly because we are advocating very strongly that there needs to be a historical context to the Royal Commission so that stories from 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago can be told. And obviously many of the institutions run by the states have been involved in those sorts of activities. But it should not be used as an excuse to delay the setting up of a Royal Commission, the choosing of the Royal Commissioners and developing the terms of reference in consultation with the advocacy groups. It's not like this is new material for those people that have been living with a disability or carers or advocates. They know what's needed, and I don't think it would take a great deal of time to set up the terms of reference, make a budget allocation towards the Royal Commission and get it started.
What areas would you like to see included in the terms of reference? Should this Royal Commission be narrow or should it be broad?
No, it should be broad. That's very important, and thank you for asking that question. For us to get, and for the Australian people and for people with disability, it has to be broad. It has to show what the interface is with the education system. For example, many children with disability go to special schools, they go to regular schools, the health system, obviously, mental health system, rehabilitation facilities. There are many, and justice is another one. So those interfaces need to be a very important part of a broad-ranging inquiry like this, like we're suggesting. And as I said, the other part of it is that there needs to be a historical context, so that stories from long ago, adults now and when they were children and young teens, can be told. I met a woman the other day who was sexually abused in an institution. Took her 30 years to talk about that, and that's important.
Could this day of delayed justice, as we heard in the story before this interview, could this day have been brought forward if the Labor Party had brought this issue up in question time earlier in the last year or two?
Well, let's be clear on what the history is here. There was a Senate inquiry in 2015. Their first recommendation was a commitment to a Royal Commission. It took the government 15 months to respond to that. In late May 2016, the Labor Party announced and made a financial commitment to a Royal Commission and have been running an ongoing petition towards that. So it's not like that we haven't announced it. It's not like there wasn't a budget commitment to have the first year of the Royal Commission. It has been in the books for 2 years, and it was last Thursday that the government voted against, last Wednesday that the government voted against it, and on Thursday, when it did come to the House, the Prime Minister extended question time to avoid a vote, as much as he's saying that he didn't. So this is not something new for Labor. We have been in this game for a long time, and we are very pleased now, very, very pleased that it's going to be a bipartisan approach.
Finally, Linda Burney, if I may just ask you a question on the other political story of the day, the cyber security breach. Do you know much more about that, and does the timing at all concern you, given it's an election year?
I don't know any more than what's on the public record, and I think we're all in that situation. Clearly, when it comes to security, Labor is at one with the government on this. Cyber security is particularly concerning, and as you said, especially in an election year. Democracy is precious, and that's what we're protecting here. So we are working closely and at one with the government on making sure that no stone is left unturned to find out who did this, what was hacked, and what the implications are. But as I say, we are at one with the government when it comes to security, including cyber security.
Linda Burney, always good to talk to you. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.